Hello everybody, Lana Rich here. My last video was 60s albums with great opening tracks. This one's going to be 70s albums with great closers or closing tracks. Again, this is in response to Couple Fetish, who did these two. I was going to combine the two, show 10 from each, but I pulled a lot. I don't know if you noticed last video. And I decided, nah, I'll just do two separate videos. And this whole idea, it opens up, the possibilities are endless. You could do albums with great openers and closers. You could do albums with great openers and it fizzles out at the end. It's just, possibilities are endless. But 1977 is going to start out with a bang. And it's Black Sabbath, Paranoid, their second album. Fairies Wear Boots. It's just a great riffs, great hooks. Everything about this album is fabulous. I'm not going to say fantastic on this one. I kind of overdid it. I say fantastic on purpose, but I think I kind of overdid it the last video. The only thing on this album that isn't fabulous is the cover. Holy mackerel, that is such a great album with such a crappy cover. And the part where I am Iron Man, that's pretty goofy too. But yeah, Fairies Wear Boots. It's a great way to close the album, but it's strong all the way through. Another great closer is Grand Funk, Closer to Home. It starts out with Closer to Home. No, She's a Good Man's Brother. The end though, I Am Your Captain, just a great song. They used to play that on the radio all the time. And I think this one has a good shot of them playing live. The bass on this guy, especially that Red album, man. It's like he's playing one chord, man, but it sounds so good, you know? Great album closer. Another one, it's American Beauty by Grateful Dead. I think side one of this is pretty much a perfect side. Side two, it's got a couple of songs that I think aren't up to the standards of the first side, but it closes with Truckin', their single off of the album. They got a lot of radio play. It was a top 40 song, and up until the late 80s when they had that Touch of Grey, you could say the Grateful Dead were a one-hit wonder. It's ridiculous, but it's kind of true. But yeah, that was a good song, man. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Oh Lucky Man. As soon as I heard that, I go, man, that is great. It's a kind of a ballady song. Now this album opens up with a strong track too, The Barbarian. And I was thinking of, I pulled this originally with the thought this came out in '69, but it was a '70 album. The Barbarian comes out with a hard-hitting song. Some of the songs in between are just not for my taste, and this is close to being on the cutting block. But boy, that Lucky Man is a great number, man. And one of my favorite bands from the early 70s are the Faces. Now in the US, I guess they were scared of the Faces because it was a new band. Small Faces was established, so they actually put Small Faces on the cover of the US version. But it ends with a 3-button down, hand-me-down. 3-button hand-me-down. Just one of those typical Rod Stewart songs that, tells a story, and it's got Ron Wood riffs galore in it. Just a it's just a great song. And this is another one that has a great opener. Wicked Messenger by Bob Dylan. Better than the Bob Dylan song version. But yeah, really good album, man. A lot of people, they're not really familiar, especially younger people. They're probably not really familiar with Rod Stewart's 60s and early 70s output. I mean, they just know the Rod Stewart Unplugged. 71. Great album. This album, I didn't buy when it first came out. All my friends had it, and it was like, I don't know, the way it started out, I was like, oh, this is just a simple rock and roll song. And I loved Stairway to Heaven, the ending of side 1. But the ending of side 2, when the levee breaks, maybe the best song on the album. It is just so hard hitting. And that drum, it's amazing that this band broke up because the drummer died. A lot of bands would just go on and get a new drummer, you know? I can't think of who. But anyways, when the levee breaks. Another great ending track is Oh Yoko. Nah, I'm just kidding. That song's horrible. That proves that John can write a wanker. It's not just Paul. T-Rex, Electric Warrior. Great album. I remember when the single Bang Gang a Bong or Bong a Gang or Bang a Gong. Bang a Bong, Bang a Gong was the single. Maggie May was the top of the charts. And when I was in England in 71, those were the two bands headlining the Wheatley Festival. But anyways, this album starts and finishes really strong. There's some tracks in the middle, those kind of wankery acoustic. Oh, I love you and you love me. You know, pretty idiotic or elementary lyrics. But Rip-Off, man, it's a gas. I mean, it's a good ripper, man. Good way to end that album. And we got another one, I guess. Miss Judy's Farm, Stay With Me. That was the song that was out in 71. It wasn't Maggie's. Maybe, I don't know, Maggie May was out too. But this is the one I was thinking of. Stay With Me. This is a great album. Side 1 of this one is a perfect side. Side 2, Memphis is really good, but it's just a notch below the rest of the songs on the album. But that's all you need. The ending track on this has such a catchy Ron Wood riff. I mean, it's a really good, some really good guitars on this album. And Rod Stewart is on top of his game. 72, Superfly. And the ending track is Superfly. This album has so many really great songs. Freddie's Dead, Pusher Man, Superfly. But yeah, it's the ending track says it all, you know, Superfly. Now I recently watched this movie. The movie's not that great. David Crosby, is it? Yeah. Graham Nash, David Crosby. This has some great songs. It has one of my favorite David Crosby songs, Page 43. But it ends with the single, Immigration Man, sung by Graham Nash. It's a great song. Very relevant today with the open borders. But yeah, very good. And my final one from 72 is David Bowie with the Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust. this opens with one of my favorites, 5 Years. But in between it has some of his greats, rock, Moon Age Daydream, Ziggy Stardust, Suffragette City. Suffragette City is like really hard, banging song, 1, 2. Thank You Man. God dang, I'm losing my mind. It's too early. I haven't eaten breakfast yet. Wham, bam, Thank You Man. But then it closes with Rock and Roll Suicide, a slower number, very soulful. I mean, the vocals in this song are just... He was a great singer, man. But yeah, it was a great way to end that album. 73. Now this album, I did not like when it came out. It's New York Dolls' debut, and it ends with Jet Boy. Now Jet Boy is a great song, but so are a lot of the others, on this. I mean, it's not the best song, but it's not the worst. It's one of the good songs on this album. But the way the song Jet Boy ends with so much force and just it builds and builds, it's just a great way to end this great album. And look who comes back for another appearance. It's the Faces, Ooh La La. And the closing track is Ooh La La. Just a nice, catchy tune. It's not one of the rippers like the last Faces album closing song. But yeah, this is a really good, and it was a big hit in the US. 74. We got Lou Reed, Sally Can't Dance. The critics hated this album when it came out. The critics hated Berlin when it came out. And I loved both of those albums. I probably liked them both more than Transformer. And this one, it's got like, really bombastic songs. But it ends with Billy. A really subtle acoustic number. And it's very autobiographical. It's just a really heartfelt song about his friend Billy. And it's just a touching way to end what I think is a great album. Now, one of the best closers, I think, of the 70s period is Starless by King Crimson on the album Red. It starts out with this riff, or however it goes, and it just builds, and it builds, and it builds. It's just until it explodes. It's just an amazing song, and it's the perfect way to end this album. We're at 75. Rock of the Westies by Elton John. I've purged most of my Elton John albums. And the ones I purged are probably, the ones that, man, that's my favorite, like Tumbleweed Connection, Madman Across the Water, Honky Chateau. The ones I kept are the ones that a lot of people don't like. This is my favorite Elton John album. I think it's his last really good album that I've heard, at least. And it's a rocker. It has like one kind of slower song, kind of like his Madman Across the Water. But the rest are pretty much all rockers. And it ends with Billy Bones and the White Bird. And it's got this guitar hook. It's just superb. And look at that band, man. That's a poser right there, isn't it? Oh, that's funny. Now, my most played album back in the day that came out in 75 was by far this one. I think this came out at the end of 75. I probably played it in 76. Well, I know I did in 76. I played it a lot. And it's got some really good songs. Gloria, the rock and take on the Van Morrison song. Redondo Beach, kind of a reggae. Maybe my favorite song. And it's got Birdland, and I think it's Land, these floaty, dreamy type songs. But it ends with Elegy, and it's kind of a softer, I don't know if I would call it a ballad, but I guess it is. And it's just a beautiful way to end, I think, one of the best albums from the 70s. Another big album for me was Led Zeppelin. I saw Led Zeppelin when they toured. I believe they were touring this album. And it was probably 76 I saw them. I saw them also in 73 when they toured for Houses of the Holy. That was a better show than this one. But anyways, let's talk about the album. This album, it's a double album. So the closing track is the Sick Again, I believe is the name. Yeah, Sick Again. It's the last song on side 4. Really good song. It isn't the best song on the album, but it's a really good way to end the album on a high note. The first album and the second record, they're almost like two different completely entities, you know? The second one it has some different, it just takes some left turns. And it's good that they wrapped it up with the Sick Again the way they did. That's all I gotta say. Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. Ending with Jungle Land. Just a great storytelling record, man. I love this. I think Thunder Road, the opening track, maybe the strongest song on the album. But ending it with Jungle Land, dude, is really good. And what an iconic cover, you know? Now another band, I saw this band in 73, and they were the opening band when I saw Zeppelin up in Frisco. And it's the Tubes. Man, they came out. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was a good show. When I came back to Bakersfield, I was telling all my friends about them, you know. And 2 years later, a year and a half later, whatever, this album came out. I bought it right away. And the final song, the closer on the album, is White Punks on Dope. That was the single. They played the heck out of it on radio, at least in Bakersfield. And yeah, it's a great way to end a really good, strong album. Their second album is really great too. But the closing track on that one is not, it's not a banger like this. Now, I think the Pink Floyd album of the 70s that has the best closer is this one. Wish You Were Here, and Shine On You Crazy Diamond is the final song, and it's breathtaking, man. This album has some breathtaking moments for me. And I didn't hear this album. It was quite a few years later, you know, when I heard this. And it was at a black couple that lived right off of Wilshire in LA. We were over there. Man, their house, their carpet was white. Their couches were white. It was a trip. We're over there smoking out. And they had this bong, and it was the shape of a big black dick, you know? So that was the first time I ever sucked on a black dick, you know? But anyways, the dude put this on. He goes, "Have you ever heard this album?" I go, "No." Man, it blew me away. And And my final one from 1975 is Moving On by the Commodores. Now, this isn't necessarily a great album. It has some great funk songs on it. It has some wanker ballads. But the closer, what is it called? Cebu, C-E-B-U. It's an instrumental, and it's kind of a tweener. It's not as funky and hard-hitting as the funk jams, but it's not sappy or slow like the slow jams. And it's a really smooth, really cool instrumental, and it's a really good way to end this album. Yeah, Vinyl Richie made the list. 76. Surprisingly, I only have one album, and it's Casey and the Sunshine Band. And the final song is Keep It Coming, Love, which was a hit, big hit. The song before it, I'm Your Boogeyman, was also a hit. And those songs, I believe all the songs on side 2, if I remember right, there's no gap in between. It's just one long flow. One song goes straight into the other. But yeah, I'm Your Boogeyman, and then Keep It Coming, Love. It's just a up-tempo party way to end a really good disco album. 77. The year things changed. Sex Pistols, Never Mind the Bollocks. I like every song on this album. It starts out strong, but it ends strong too with EMI. And just, even the final, the way he says, and then there's a little fart at the end. It's just a great album. Best album from 1977 in my opinion, and EMI was it was an appropriate finish. Another strong album from 77 is the closer, Waiting for the End of the World. It follows I'm Not Angry, which is a hard-hitting, kind of fast, angry song. And then it goes into this Waiting for the End of the World, which is more catchy, kind of quirky, just a really good tune. And it's just a perfect ending for almost a perfect album. The Ramones, Leave Home. Now, the Ramones albums from the 70s, they all started with bangers. They all had great opening tracks. I think this one has the best closing track of the bunch. And it's a song that's not, high on people's lists. You Should Never Have Opened That Door. It's just a short, catchy, fun tune, fun. He's talking about chopping someone's head off. But yeah, I love the Ramones. Another great one from 77. It's Talking Heads 77, their debut. The second to last song is Psycho Killer. I remember hearing that on the radio and I was like, holy mackerel, that is so good. And it's followed by Pulled Up. Just a beautiful melody. And it's perfect the way it follows Psycho Killer. And it's a great way to end. And there's no Brian Eno on here. They didn't need Brian Eno, man. Everybody gives Brian Eno too much credit, I think. And my final one for 77 is Donna Summer, I Remember Yesterday. This has some wankers on it. But the closing track, I Feel Love, it's a synthesizer heaven, man. It's as good as anything anybody else was doing, like Eno or Bowie. It's just a strong track. It's different than all the other songs on the album. But yeah, I think it's a great song. Now we're at 78. And we got the electric chairs, blatantly offensive. It's been probably less than a year, maybe a year since that I've owned this album. And I know when I did my vinyl finds, I think I'd only heard it once. And I said the vocals were kind of like that Lou Reed spoken word. You know how like Lou Reed would kind of talk the songs instead of singing? Especially on that Sally Can't Dance album. He's kind of talking through these songs, a lot of them. And I said that about this, and it's really not true, upon further listens. I mean, it starts off that way maybe with the F off song, but the closing song on here is Rock and Roll Resurrection. And if anything, it has Iggy Pop vocal stylings. And the song has the Stooges energy to it. And it's a really great way to end a overlooked record, really. One that's not overlooked is Elvis Costello and Armed Forces. And it ends with what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding. A wordy title, but a great song. And this song has a lot of really quirky stuff to it. And to end it on a kind of a basic rock and roll note, I think was a pretty smart move. And another 78 return. Bruce Springsteen, probably my favorite album by him. Side 1 of this album is a perfect side. But it ends with Darkness on the Edge of Town. Kind of a gloomy, doomy song. But just beautifully written, man. Another one that finishes with a banger, man. Rolling Stones' Some Girls. A lot of people love this album. I think it's okay. I mean, it's got some great songs, but it's got some stupid shit on it too, Their version of Imagination, it's not that good. And then Faraway Eyes. Isn't that the one where Mick Jagger kind of does the stupid country? It's a good song. I mean, he should have just sang it straight and it would have been great. But it ends with a rocker, Shattered. And I don't know if it's the influence of punk on the Stones, but it was a pretty good and surprising way to end a Rolling Stones record. The Cars, their debut. And I brought out my mobile fidelity just to piss off the audio files. This album and the second album, for me, it's all I need for the Cars. They have some good songs after that, but I haven't been able to get into the whole album as a whole. And this one, man, it plays like a greatest hits almost. But it ends with All Mixed Up. A little moodier, All Mixed Up. It's not as rocky, I guess, but it is. But it's got kind of like this keyboard synthesizer feel to it. And it's a great way to end this rockin' album, really, And 79, the last year of the decade. We got The Clash with London Calling. The final song, Train in Vain, isn't even listed on the jacket. It was a big hit single. I'm thinking they didn't have the single on the UK version, maybe. And they just didn't bother changing the graphics art. I could be wrong. Maybe it was on the UK and it wasn't listed there either. But yeah, talk about a song that opens with a strong song and it ends with a strong song. London Calling, the first song on side 1. And then Train in Vain, the last song on side 4. It's just... And everything in between, almost all of it, is pretty darn good. Another album that ends with a banger is Neil Young's Rust Never Sleeps. Side 1 of this is acoustic. Side 2 of this is, I believe it's with Crazy Horse. At least it sounds like it. And it ends with Hey, Hey, My, Into the Black. Fantastic. Just a stoner, really raw, garage sounding guitars. I mean, it was pretty original sounding. And he even mentions Johnny Rotten in it. And the final album of the decade is the incredible Shrinking Dickies. This has some fabulous songs. I've mentioned before that their first 2 albums I like a lot, but it didn't capture how good they were in concert or live. It's a little polished. But the ending to this album, Rondo, The Midget's Revenge, it's an instrumental, and it's just dun 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 dun, or however it goes. It's just fantastic way to end this album, man. First LA punk band to be signed to a major. You know, New York, man, Sire Records was signing all those bands. Yeah, man. If only there was a label like that in LA that would have signed, you know, the Screamers or the Weirdos early on. Who knows? But yeah, great album. That cover, I always had issues with. I mean, it's an incredible Shrinking Dickies, fine. And you got this pencil stabbing Chuck Wagon. You got this guy with a toothbrush. He was the bass player. What's his name? Rodeo Carlos. Yeah. But then you got this phone. It's like smaller than the pencil. And you get this glass. You got this mug. They should have just left those things out and just left the pencil and the toothbrush. Would have been a better cover. Take care, everybody. Go Jets! Jetss.